welcome to our live coverage of the 57th Mashujaa Day celebrations here, Jamhuri Day celebrations, I beg your pardon, here in the country. Nearly 6 decades ago, Kenya became a republic on December 12, 1964, after attaining independence from the United Kingdom a year earlier on 12 December 1963. The best of the KTN News crew will be capturing the highlights of this important celebration at the Nyayo National Stadium. The President Uhuru Kenyatta is set to preside over the celebrations, and across the country our teams will also be giving us a situation in the counties which will not hold Jamhuri Day celebrations this year owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. Here in studio, I am joined live by governance expert Charles Kipkulei, speaking to us about the expectations on this 57th Jamhuri Day celebrations, specifically the expectations on President Uhuru Kenyatta's speech, largely expected to touch on the COVID-19 pandemic, the health sector and the BBI as well. We also have the best of the KTN News crew live from the Nyayo National Stadium. Our political reporter Murimi Mwangi, Jeff Kirui. We also have Mark Namaso and Emmanuel To bringing us the latest on that ground. Murimi, let's begin with you. A very good morning. Let's touch base on the preparations there ahead of President Uhuru Kenyatta's arrival.
Good morning, Michelle. Certainly a big day for the country, the celebration of the Jamhuri Day celebrations, the year 2020, a celebration that is happening under very peculiar circumstances, socially, politically, and economically. And the seriousness and the magnitude to which this is happening can perhaps be best captured by the sparsely occupied Nyayo National Stadium here today, even with its usual capacity of over 30,000 persons. Today, only 5,000 delegates have been invited for the national fete here, with the simultaneous county events that would ideally be happening across the 47 counties not happening today. That, of course, occasioned by the prevailing COVID-19 pandemic. A serious speech expected from President Uhuru Kenyatta, a speech that will be keenly scrutinized by the 47 million Kenyans, keen to see if the president is going to address all the prevailing issues in the country, the most prominent of which is the ongoing strike by healthcare workers. The clinical and clinical officers have been on strike for the better part of the week, keen to have their issues addressed, some of their complaints being that the government has not appeared serious in terms of assisting them in their frontline work in counter COVID-19, the personal protective equipment, and the whole discussion about how seriously the country takes the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly for the frontline workers that have been on the front line countering this new pandemic in the country, a rather invisible yet deadly enemy that has occasioned simultaneous repercussions, be it politically and economically. These celebrations happening at a time when the country's revenue collections have been hit by a shortfall of up to 40 billion shillings, quite a precarious state of affairs for the National Treasury that has had to seek loans to bridge the gap, with Kenyans expected to face the full repercussions of the economic shockwaves of the COVID-19 pandemic early next year, when the tax holidays that President Uhuru Kenyatta had announced earlier this year expire, when we revert to the usual taxation measures. And this is, of course, expected to feature in the president's speech. Kenyans keen to hear how they cross over to the new year after the festivities that are happening, as I said, under very peculiar circumstances, where much of what we do, how we gather, is dictated by this invisible yet deadly enemy that is the coronavirus pandemic. But also today, perhaps a departure from the tradition, besides the military fanfare that we will be expecting to be happening here, a section of these celebrations that has come to define the national celebrations is not going to be happening. That has been the tradition of the school-going children carving out the figure of, for instance, if this is the 57th Jamhuri Day celebrations, we'll be expecting to see them there do that figure of 57 with the colors of the national flag. That will not be happening and did not even happen at the Madaraka Day celebrations in Kisii. policy, that of course also to safeguard the kids from infections of the coronavirus disease. I am with several of my colleagues here, and you will be hearing from them shortly. My colleague Mark Namaso, perhaps if I could begin with you, what should we expect from President Uhuru Kenyatta's speech here today?
Now, looking at the issues that we are facing at the moment with Kenya as a republic for almost 6 decades, we are looking at a situation in which Kenyans right now are more than they were in population compared to 1963, 1964. At the time, there were less than 10 million Kenyans, and they were very expectant of the new government that was coming into office. At the time, Kenyans were looking forward to a more prosperous republic. Of course, they were savoring at the cusp of independence, looking at how their fellow Africans are going to run the republic, looking at how we were going to be able to get rid of illiteracy, getting rid of hunger, getting rid of disease, and getting rid of all the ailments that bedeviled us during the colonial period. Now, almost 6 decades, we are dealing with the same issues. Now, looking at the mood of Kenyans in 1964 and right now, do we see any difference? Yes, there is a difference. Looking at Nyayo National Stadium at the moment, we have just less than 5,000 people that will be allowed in today compared to the numbers that would have been there. Of course, this stadium was built in 1983. But did Kenyans of the moment in 1964 when Kenya became a republic, did they expect to get independence, or did they expect it? Now, going back to colonial history, after the scramble and partition of Africa in the 1890s, in 1960, Harold Macmillan, the then Prime Minister for Britain, was speaking before the South African National Assembly, and he spoke about the wind of change. His speech was on the wind of change, and he spoke extensively about the British Empire's resolution to grant independence to its extensive network of colonies across the Pacific, the Caribbean, Africa, as well as the Americas. And many people at the time were very expectant. They looked forward to have a prosperous republics free of colonial rule. And what happened? In 1964, our founding president, Jomo Kenyatta, transitioned from becoming a prime minister, a position he had held for a year, and in 1964 he became the president. And Kenyans were very expectant of new changes, a new dispensation, new political power for the African class. And he did what he could do at the time, setting up schools, trying to revamp the economy and Africanize most of the industries that we had. He also tried to look at infrastructure. Kenya looked like one big, great jungle at the time. Now, almost 60 years, we have tried our best. Kenya is one of the nations with the most educated populations across East Africa, but we still have our own problems. Our economy is in shambles. We are struggling with a huge mass of youth that are unemployed. We are struggling with our economy, also struggling with geopolitics, as well as the current issues that are facing the nation, such as the healthcare crisis, as well as the global pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, that is now resulting in we having a stadium that is not full of people, that people do not have the liberty to celebrate the way they used to do, not because they cannot be allowed to do that, but because of health reasons. So as we look at this year's Jamhuri Day celebrations, we will be doing stock taking of our nation concerning how far we have come, how far we have gone, and looking at the challenges that we had about 60 years ago and how we are going to deal with them, as well as incorporate the new challenges that are being meted upon us with global changing, and Kenya being part of the global geopolitics and economic empire. And now let us head to Jeff Kirui, who's on the other side of Nyayo National Stadium, as we continue giving you the updates from here. Back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Mark Namaso. A very rich history there regarding the Jamhuri Day celebrations in Kenya. The country is celebrating the 57th Jamhuri Day, of course, since Kenya became a republic in December 1964. And of course, as earlier put by my colleague Murimi Mwangi, we are celebrating this Jamhuri Day at a peculiar time where the world is actually grappling with the effects of COVID pandemic. To put it into perspective is that worldwide there have been more than 16 million cases recorded. Kenya specifically has recorded more than 90,000 cases of coronavirus in the country, with 1,500 more than 1,500 deaths recorded and 70,000 recoveries in the country. But currently it is at the time where the healthcare workers are actually agitating for more proactive measures from the government to protect them as frontline workers. Remember, there is an ongoing strike by the healthcare workers, and one of the agitation has been regarding the government's endeavor to equip them with a personal protective equipment. And the CS of Health, Mutahi Kagwe, has been on the spotlight regarding the same. Remember, a few weeks ago he appeared before the Senate's Committee on Health regarding the release of the PPEs to frontline workers. And of course, those are some of the issues that actually will be expecting to be discussed by President Uhuru Kenyatta when he addresses this 57th Jamhuri Day celebration. There are also issues surrounding the BBI politics, the political environment in the country at the time that the country is gearing towards a referendum. Remember, there is that Building Bridges initiative, that is the popular initiative towards amending the constitution, and that has also brought about issues to do with the politics of the 2022. And as it stands now, it's a politics of unity which is being fronted by President Uhuru Kenyatta and his co-principal Raila Odinga. And as it stands now, remember last week, there has been that push to collect 1 million signatures, and the same was submitted to the IEBC on Thursday, more than 4.4 million signatures, which will form the basis of going for that referendum. That 4.4 million signatures submitted to IEBC, plus the Constitution Amendment Bill of 2020. But as it stands now, IEBC is awaiting, they say, from the Treasury on the money that will be allocated, as IEBC Chair Wafula Chebukati says that exercise will kick off only after receiving budgetary allocation from the Ministry of Treasury. And of course, there will be other issues as well coming up from this, and that is matters to do with the national unity. But of course, right now, I am with my colleague Emmanuel Tau, who will be taking us to the people to exactly get the feeling. Remember, this particular stadium, they have only invited only 5,000 as opposed to the capacity of 30,000. And from that, you remember, Nairobi County has 17 constituencies, and from each constituency, the total number of people invited to this will be divided among the 17 constituencies. So basically, they are trying to stick to the COVID protocols as issued by the Ministry of Health. The officers from the National Youth Service actually are the one ensuring that the strict adherence to the COVID protocols. Of course, right now, I'll be taking you to my colleague Emmanuel to give us a feel of what people feel about this Jamhuri Day celebration. Tau.
Well, thank you very much, my brother. That is Jeff Kiroi. And it has been a year with a difference, a year where these celebrations are being marked with a lot of caution, of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic, had the backdrop of it. And Kenyans have been hard hit with this pandemic, and most of them have been jobless. Most